so good of you to come. And we have a series of questions we'd like to ask you. And Rachel, would you be so kind to begin, since you've had some experience in planning and zoning?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mike. Okay, Stephen, we'll start with why are you interested in being a participant on the commission?
For me, I'd like to start off by just saying real quick, thank you all for having me. Thank you all for making the time for this interview. And as far as I'm concerned, each and every one of you holds a pretty thankless position, and you all have very hard jobs. So thank you very much for what you do, and thank you for having me. To answer your question, Rachel, really, I would say priority number one for me in my reasoning for wanting to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission is to serve the community. I was born and raised here, and just a little bit of my background as quickly as possible. I earned a degree in engineering and I work in construction, and I believe that I have accrued some experience and perhaps some talents, if you will, that I believe will allow me to serve my community in this fashion. We all have various talents, and we all have various things that help us be suited for certain places. And really, truly, it comes down to looking at myself and where my strengths lie, in my opinion, and trying to give that back to the community. And that's really my top reason for why I want to be on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is I believe that I have some experience that could be of service to the community, and I want to put that forth and give that back to them. So in whatever way that I can do that, I believe that the Planning and Zoning Commission would be a great opportunity to give back.
Thank you, Stephen. So then what do you think the chief functions of the Planning and Zoning Commission are? So what is your idea of what they do?
Well, obviously, I believe that there are a lot of behind the scenes work that go into operating the city, right? I mean, there are so many things that John Doe or Jane Doe may not realize go into the way that a city works. You know, mapping out streets, obviously talking about growth, planned unit development, subdivision, things of that nature. A lot of people will drive into a neighborhood and say, oh, well, this neighborhood was just here. They don't understand the setbacks. They don't understand all of the things that people work meticulously on putting forth. So really, this is Stephen Candelari's version. I guess I could whip onto the internet and give you the definition off of the City Cortez website, but I'm not going to do that. Obviously, the Planning and Zoning Commission, it's their job to review the inner workings of the planning and zoning that goes into the city, and then obviously deliberating, taking that back, looking at the land use code, making sure that it jives with the land use code, and then making the best case decision and recommendation towards the city council so that y'all members can make your best judgment based off of what the Planning and Zoning Commission basically suggests. And overall, there's a lot of behind the scenes things that go into the decisions and the, I guess, moving things forward. And in that regard, I think that's its chief function, is to make sure that the Planning and Zoning Commission gives City Council the best idea of what needs to be done, as well as working with developers and homeowners and just the citizens of Cortez in regard to land use and planning and zoning.
So then if say an application comes that meets all the requirements of the land use code, but you personally don't approve of it, how will you handle that as a commissioner?
Can you be more specific in what you mean by if I personally don't approve of it?
I guess will you be able to be unbiased and execute the role that way, I guess?
Absolutely. I mean, that's the great thing about having a land use code to follow is I mean, relatively speaking, matters tend to be a little more black and white, right? As you mentioned in this hypothetical question, if a particular development or a business or whatever it may be meets all of the requirements, obviously it would be my role to set my own personal biases aside and suggest or vote accordingly in that regard. Obviously, every single one of us has biases. However, the role of the commissioner, in my opinion, is not to have a bias, but to review the matters. And if all the boxes are checked, then I believe that I would have a hard time not moving something forward, if that answers your question.
So what do you think is the biggest planning issue facing the city?
Right now?
Yeah, I guess now or in the future.
Oh man. We could probably rattle off about 100 different things, but obviously the master street plan, making sure that there's good coordination with city and county entities, making sure that, you know, that's all copacetic, so that obviously Montezuma County doesn't see astronomical or exponential growth, right? But if for some reason we see that growth, making sure that we're well equipped to handle that. Obviously, I guess the hot skillet prior to the pandemic coming up was the land use code, and I think that the citizens were. It's one of those things where I feel like the citizens, it's going to come back around, right? If the city of Cortez wants to move forward or update the land use code, I think that due to the recent happenings a few months ago, people are going to be very in tune and very involved in what that may be. So I guess that could be relatively current events or future events. But aside from that, I feel like there's not, at least, and this is just from what I've heard and everything, I don't hear of too many new developments. I don't hear of a lot of controversial things coming across the plate. So I would say probably making sure that we're well equipped for proper growth, as well as if the city of Cortez chooses to move forward with a new or updated land use code, that it is something that serves the citizens to their liking.
Great.
Steve?
I just have one last question. So then the meetings are the first Tuesday of each month on at 6:30 p.m. And sometimes the second meeting could be called on the third Tuesday of each month. And if there's a work session, it's usually at 5 p.m. Would you have a problem attending those meetings, or would you be able to fit that in your schedule?
I would be able to fit that in. I would make that a priority.
Okay, great.
Steve, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
I see you're the operations manager of Candelaria Construction. Do you see any conflict of interest if you become a member of the Commission of Planning and Zoning?
I personally do not, Mike. The biggest thing for me is we are a general contractor and we also do developments. So I can understand that there will be certain things that will come across the Planning and Zoning Commission's desk, or I'm sorry, the board of the Planning and Zoning Commissioners, where quite frankly, I'll have to recuse myself. It's one of those things where, you know, obviously if I'm moving forward a development, I want it to move forward, right? I mean, why else would I want to do that? That's not why I'm here. That's not why I want to be a planning and zoning commissioner. It's not for my own personal interest. It's, again, to serve the community. And if for some reason myself as Stephen Candelaria or Candelaria Construction had any dealings with the Planning and Zoning Commission where the Planning and Zoning Commission would have to make a decision, I think the only proper thing to do would be to recuse myself, such that there would be no opportunity for conflict of interest.
Okay, thank you. We have about 4 or 5 more minutes. Do any of the other council members have any questions for Stephen Candelaria?
I do, Stephen. Just out of curiosity, as a member of the Planning and Zoning Commission, what is your vision of for Cortez in the next, let's say, 5 to 7 years?
The vision of Cortez in the next 5 to 7 years, in just regards to planning and zoning?
Well, that's a big part of where we need to be. Yes.
Certainly. You know, I was born and raised in Cortez, and quite frankly, there hasn't been a substantial or an exponential amount of growth. So in regard to growth in planning and zoning, I don't see that there would be much change in that regard as far as a vision goes. I think that the biggest thing that I would like to do is work with obviously the city staff and the citizens of Cortez to really develop a very strong line of communication, as well as just an opportunity to work together to give the citizens what they need, as well as give whatever developers or business owners or people looking to planning and zoning for whatever needs they may have, making sure that we have a strong relationship with the citizens of Cortez, as well as the city staff and the inner workings of the Planning and Zoning Commission with the city staff, and then obviously offering the best support that we can to the city council. And I don't take that the wrong way. I don't think that it's in a bad place right now, but I'm a believer that no matter how good you are at something, that it can always be improved. And I think that primarily focusing on relationships, focusing on networking and the partnerships that need to be done to make sure that the city of Cortez operates to the best of its ability in the capacity of planning and zoning, and with the other entities that tie in with that.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other questions, council members?
I do have one more. Stephen, I'd like to know just personally if you feel comfortable working with the current city council.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. I have a question. Do you see yourself moving beyond planning and zoning? Do you have any other aspirations within city government?
Oh man, I think we should take one step at a time. Obviously, where I may be in 2 to 4 years is unknown to me right now. Things are constantly changing, and we see that the evolution not only of ourselves but of certain roles and aspirations that we may have. That's I can't give you a proper answer right now because I don't really know it. I think that I need to take this step, move forward, and I'll give you that answer in 2 years.
Thank you, Stephen. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Stephen, I have a question. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
So the other 4 people sitting in on the P&Z Commission, Rebecca Levy, Robert Rhymes, Tom Butler, Lance McDaniel, do you have any prior experience just within the community with one or all of those persons? Have you formed relationships with any of them?
I don't have any personal relationships with any of those individuals. I know Robert because I went to high school with his daughter, and really outside of that, I don't have much of a professional or personal relationship with any of the individuals.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Later on in our regular agenda, we'll discuss whether or not you're accepted in the Planning and Zoning Commission. So stay tuned.
Very well. Thank you all so much for this opportunity and for the time. I appreciate you. And you all have a great rest of your workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you so
interest.
much.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
I do have a question, Mike,
Okay.
not for Steve. But did we have any other applications come in for planning and zoning?
Yes, Sue, we had 2 other applications within the time period that we advertised the position. I called both of them for interviews and they both withdrew their letters of interest. Said their lives had changed and their decision to apply had changed as well. So there were 2 other applicants for the position.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is a finance update with Finance Director Ben Burkett. Okay, Ben.
Good evening. Good evening. You all hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, and if at any point, I know sometimes the internet gets a little wobbly, if you want to call it that, technical term there. If I skip out, please feel free to stop me. So I just have three things I want to discuss tonight. The first off is regarding sales tax, and what that is. The state of Colorado is performing an effort to centralize sales tax collections for online retailers. It is a result of the Wayfair court case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said, well, you know what, these online retailers, they need to collect and remit sales tax where it's feasibly manageable. And really what that meant was all the different municipalities across the US really can't require each of these online retailers to separately file and report and remit sales taxes. It's just administratively difficult. So the result of that is all the states at the state level are getting together separately, again at the state level, to create a mechanism by which to collect those online sales taxes. So I'm just making you all informed that, hey, we're moving forward with part of that system to make sure we get all the revenues we can. Like today, Amazon and several other online retailers do remit sales tax to us directly, but there are probably some retailers that we may be missing. So we want to make sure we get everybody. Really, for us, there's not a lot of changes because fortunately the software system that the state of Colorado is using is what we use, is MuniRevs. So there are some differences, but they link in very nicely together. We will have a agreement that we have to sign, which basically we just have to say, yes, state of Colorado, we agree that you're going to be administering this this effort and the reporting, and then you're going to remit the monies to us and provide us the data and detail to us. So we're moving forward with that. As John Doherty is out on medical leave, even though I do see him here tonight listening in, we will just make a determination on who can sign that agreement, whether that's John when he comes back, or Mike, or Mayor, that would be you, or anybody else, but I'll take Mike Green's direction on who'd probably be the best person to sign that. So I just want to make you aware of that. I don't expect or anticipate large amounts of remittances, but hey, if we get $5,000 to $10,000 at no cost to us, it's worth it. So that's number one. Are there any questions regarding that or clarification? All right. Number two, I wanted to give you a quick impact of the COVID. If you remember, back in early April, provided the report to the prior council, and I think that was the evening that you all transitioned possibly, where we did a projection of sales tax and lodgers tax collections. And I just wanted to quickly provide you an update of how that is going. In your packet, there is a report there, or a memo there, that has two tables right in the middle of it. The first table is sales tax. The second.
What page?
I don't have the whole packet in front of me. I just have mine in front of me.
Okay.
So my guess is it's 1, 2, 3. Okay. I apologize for that, but it's the one that says, you'll see it in there. And what you'll notice is we are actually trending as what was expected, as projected for the April and the unofficial May collections. The reason why I said it's unofficial is the sales tax reporting and remittances happen on the 25th of every month. So in order for me to get this report together, I got to pull the numbers before they're finalized. But it gives you an indication of where we're standing. And if you'll know, in May, it's 6% under what was budgeted, which is about along the lines of what we were kind of expecting. However, just so you're aware, I did go and pull the numbers again today, and they were about $50,000 more in sales tax collections that have come in. So it's running around $900,000. What we're definitely seeing, though, is, as you can tell from the lodgers tax, the tourism side is taking a beating. It's about 50% down, okay? The sales tax portion related to tourism, so hotels collect both sales tax and lodgers tax. The sales tax portion of the collected by those hotels is down about 33 to 40%. So what that tells you and tells us is what we had discussed in a previous meeting, was that we're really relying on the local economy. And you can see it here in the numbers. Our local economy is still strong. Consumers are still very confident, and they're still turning up and supporting our businesses. With that said, I do not want to minimize some of those businesses that are hurting, primarily in the restaurant industry and that service sector associated with tourism. I looked at some category spend for sales tax, and give you an idea, those businesses that identify as eating or drinking places, their sales tax collection is down about 8%. And then let's see what else. So that's down there. On the opposite end, though, on a more positive note, our medical marijuana is dramatically up. So so I'm calling our just for fun, our WAG, our weed, alcohol, and groceries are very strong at this point. So they're making up for the shortfall. But again, it's still good to get the word out to support our local eateries and help them support, especially since things have kind of relaxed and opened up recently with the governor's orders. The projections, were very close to what was originally projected, which you'll see in the report. I think it was a $1.1 million shortfall is what was projected. It's still about $1 million. It's down a little bit from where it originally stood. Back in April, the city manager, John Doherty, had presented to council at that time about $900,000 worth of savings. Those savings are still being implemented, and they were implemented, and so we should still see those. What that means is I do not believe you all need an immediate reaction at this time. It's of course up to you to just make those decisions, but I think a steady course is still prudent and still viable. We still have time to come in to see in June, July, to see how sales tax collections are going from there, as well as to see how COVID is continuing. So are there any questions on that front, the projections?
No questions.
Okay, and then the final item, so I'll probably be, I'm hoping this will be interactive, but what's next is the financial report. That is following the memo I had just provided. And again, if you remember, at the end of every month, we're providing a financial report of budget versus actuals, as well as our cash standings and investment standings. You can see where they're at. Excuse me.
Ben,
Yeah.
which month is this for? Because it says January at the top.
Well, it's for May.
Okay.
So apologize that template didn't get updated for you. So so it's in May, but the numbers you'll notice are January through April.
Mhm.
Okay. Real quick, as you look at the cash investments, due to real estate on the page, I'm limiting it to a 3-month review. So you'll just see February through April. That's intentional. We shouldn't see a whole lot of swings in there, frankly. We will at times, just depending on cash expenses, meaning what cash was collected and what was spent and went out the door. But our investment side, you see it's usually pretty stable. In the last month, we did have several bonds that were called just due to the market interest rates. So we reinvested those bonds into other bonds as well. From the general funds summary there, the change in net position. Again, change in net position is really the equivalent of your income, your revenue. That's what's left over at the end of the month after your money in and money out. And as you'll notice there, January through April, January had the negative net position, but February, March, and April have. And you'll notice April, I believe, one reason why we'll see a little, March and April, a little higher net position than what maybe otherwise would expect is because the department heads had started, gearing back and holding back a little bit due to COVID at that time, just to wait and see. And then also, again, the implementation of some cost savings. And then as you go on, I provide you the page after that. It's the current month versus the prior month and its year-to-date numbers, so you can get a comparison and get an idea. Then we have it by department. If you want to go to there, there's several graphs in there as you look through. They give you an idea. Just they're gauges, right, on the revenues this year versus revenues last year to see how they're coming and going. And then again, the summary of expenditures by department for the general fund. One thing that you may notice is for like city manager, human resources, city clerk, finance, it looks like every month they're spending higher than what the actual month budget is. And the reason being is the way the monthly budget is calculated is we just take the total dollar amount budget for that department, divide by 12. Just a simple peanut buttering is the term I use, okay? What it doesn't account for though is in July is when we will cross-charge all the other departments or other funds for services provided by city manager, human resources, city clerk, and finance. Okay, so that actually, when those, and that actually will be revenue into the general fund, so to speak. Okay, and that will actually reduce the average spend that you would see here. So I just want you to be aware of that as we get into it. And you can see that in the graph on that same pack, that memo. It's page 11 of 18, where you'll see in July there's a giant peak there, and that's what that is. That's the intercharges that will happen, intercharges that we get also from the shop as well as from technology services.
Is that peak typical, Ben? in
It
July?
is. It is. When we ideally, where I want to get to a point to is when we get through the audits, get the audits complete. What I would like to do is address how we're doing those intercompany service charges. I would actually like to do it monthly, so it gives you all as a reviewer probably a better basis by which to do a comparison. But for now, it is comparable because in the last years, that's what you'll see is that peak. So it is comparable in a sense. Moving down onto sales tax, you get there's some graphs on sales tax which kind of align to what we had just discussed about the COVID-19 impact on sales tax there. And as you can see, it's doing okay. It's not quite where budget was, but it's still very strong. We will have to wait and see what the true impact from tourism will be on the sales tax collections. Then further down the next page there, page 13 is where you can see the breakdown of marijuana tax receipts. As you can see, it's been very strong. So adding to the coffers very nicely. And by the way, as a reminder, our marijuana is not a separate marijuana tax, it's just sales tax. We do not have a separate charge for marijuana purchases, which Dolores and Minkus both do have. All right, and then we move into the street improvement fund. As you can see, the street improvement fund is just doing day-to-day business as they're moving on. You'll notice that there's total expenses in April. Their expenses are a little higher than the other months. And what that is the, I believe the settlement that was discussed last month with Western Gravel. And the rest there is just, again, additional graphs and more detailed information there if you'd like to dig in and get see a little more where variances exist, how cost categories are performing, whether people or the revenues are coming in or expenses are coming in higher or lower. Give you an idea for comparison.
I have a question, Ben.
You
so
bet.
Then where it says intergovernmental, is that a line then for when you're charging one department for services of another, what you're talking about that happens in July?
On the revenue or the expenses? Because I have both. So
well,
let me give you.
It was an expense.
Yeah, so the expense will be, oh, I'm looking at the wrong department there. Bear with me a moment. Just make sure I'm on the right same page here. Yeah, so that intergovernmental expense will be those interdepartment charges. So when we charge from the general fund for let's say finance support for helping with the budgeting and invoicing and payroll and those efforts. And we will charge over to, like the rec center, the streets, and so on. That's where you'll see that hit there.
Okay.
Okay. Just for clarification though, because the intergovernmental on the revenue standpoint, okay, that's typically more monies that we receive from the state of Colorado. Okay. So it is a little different. All right, so with that, any other questions? And then I'm giving you time back if not.
I have no more questions. Council? Okay, the next item on our agenda, we're running a little ahead here. Public Works update with Public Works Director Phil Johnson and Water Treatment Plant Superintendent Rich Landreth.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Rich, do you want to go first, or you just want to take these by the agenda items?
Makes no difference to me.
Okay, why don't you just go ahead and go first on the co-warn thing then?
All right, I have to pick up all my papers that I dropped, but here we go. Okay, good evening. I'm here to discuss the Colorado Water and Wastewater Agency Response Network, or co-warn. There is in order to join, I mean, I believe we should join this organization. It's, it's there to help in cases of extreme emergencies, essentially. In order to join, there is a mutual aid agreement that needs to be signed. The last sentence in the discussion hasn't happened actually, so I guess we'll have to wait for the attorney to give his blessing on this document. But most of the agencies in the area are members already. City of Durango, Animas Water Company, the Cortez Sanitation District, Pagosa Area Water Sanitation District, and Purgatory Metro, and among a whole bunch of others. I think this is a good thing, and I think we should consider joining. And I'll take questions.
Have we entered into this agreement previously, Rich?
We have not.
Okay. And what other agencies in the surrounding areas are members? Would you repeat that?
The City of Durango, Cortez Sanitation,
Okay.
Animas Water Company, Pagosa Area Water and Sanitation, Purgatory Metro, and then there's a whole bunch of other, smaller utilities. There's probably at least 20 in Southwest Colorado.
Okay. And they're getting favorable results from being members of this agency?
I don't know if anybody has actually had to request any aid. I'm not sure if you do, Phil, or not, but essentially what this is this gets us a placeholder. It sets up rules and regulations for, asking for aid or else offering aid if we care to do that. And we're not obligated to do anything with this agreement.
Right, Mayor Levy, I'd like to chime in with Rich that, this just helps us list our resources and assets. And then of course, on the flip side, other resources and assets would be made available to us if in fact we were hit for something foreseeable in an emergency. So I think this is a really good effort. It's a state level, and it just shows that we're committed to our surrounding neighbors and communities.
Thank you, Phil.
This green, I got no problem with this agreement. Matter of fact, there's a couple of sections in it which would be really helpful to the city on page 64. Article 6, cost reimbursement, things like that. Those are huge for all the members, knowing you're going to get reimbursed for what you do if FEMA monies or other monies are received. So I think this is a step forward in the right direction for us.
Thank you, Mike.
Is there a cost associated to be a member, or is it just MOUs?
There's no cost unless of course we request help.
Mhm.
But just to be a member, there's no cost, and there's a lot of one of the advantages is they have a lot of documents and guidelines that will help us kind of develop our emergency plans as we go forward.
Sounds like a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay, so if there aren't any more questions, we'll just be bringing that for the agenda meeting this evening for you guys to vote on.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich. Okay, I just wanted to give background on two of our agenda items. And as a rule, generally, when I bring something to the table like this, I like to talk about it in the workshop. So if you have any questions or whatnot, we can just address it in this venue. But what we're looking to do is get on-call engineers, which we've had before, even though we've had on-staff engineers. But right now, we're in a peculiar situation where our city engineer left, and then our assistant city engineer left. But while we were advertising for our city engineer, we had no applicants. We extended the application period, still no applicants. And I think that, given our current state of affairs between the health scare and our financials, we're not going to be designing any big projects. What we have in hand now will get us through this year. And with a contract engineer, any of our concrete cost share stuff, we could have designed through them. So right now, we're really ripe to contract this service out and then retool again, in the next year, maybe. Once we land on our feet and find out where we are and where we can reinvest our funds in our city and our infrastructure. And this does not this contract that I'll be bringing before you tonight is a 2-year contract. So we would not only call on them when we needed them. There's a significant amount of savings with the overhead of the 2 positions not being filled. And we do have, I believe, $38,000 in the street improvement fund to fund any engineering. And if there is like a water project that we need to have reviewed or worked on, we'd have that funded out of the water fund, or, conversely, any other fund that needs that service. So that's why we are here. I normally would not advocate that we don't have an engineer on staff full-time, given our normal funding cycle and workload, but right now we're not in that place. So I'm open to any and all questions.
Hey, Phil, is SGM Incorporated Cortez based?
They have an office in Durango, and we have worked with them quite a bit. Yes, ma'am. So they're local, Southwest Colorado.
This is just for the next few years until we can, because what's the long-term goal, to eventually get a city manager or a city engineer again, or an engineer tech, or both eventually?
Well, I would like to think that eventually, yes, we'll get our engineer back. Absolutely. I would definitely support and advocate to have that position refilled. But, maybe moving forward from that, it's going to be a blend of contracting out support services and having a mainstay city engineer full-time, and just see how that works out.
Why do you think there's no applicants?
Oh, several reasons. One is right now with the health scare, I don't think a lot of people are moving around. Well, I say that after I said 2 positions left, but they left this place. And I think also, our financial press might not be doing us any favors. And that's okay. We're going to be okay. We'll get another city engineer. This is a temporary condition, or like I said, it could be a blended role in the future.
Okay.
Do you think maybe it has something to do with pay scale?
Well, that goes without saying. We do have that. Everyone is aware of our economy here in our area locally, and I think yes, that could be a problem. But there are people that want to live, have qualities of life that necessarily money doesn't play into that. And I hope that our wage scale gets better, but we're going to have to strengthen our financial position before we can do that.
This is a trend you're seeing generally across some of the city positions is the wages aren't competitive, sometimes even within the other city employers. So I think we're due for another wage study was what I understood maybe.
Phil, I see where Chad Hill is the project manager of SGM. He's our
Yes.
former engineer. Just a comment.
Oh, I know, and I'm glad you noticed that, and that is just, I think, really lends to the value of SGM because he has had mileage with us. He did a great job for us, and we're going to get a lot of value for his time because we don't have to retrain him how to work within our organization. He can engage us as he sees fit and as we see fit, and he did really exceptional work for us. And to be quite honest with you, him getting snatched up by a local operator was inevitable.
Mike, what did you say? So he was a Cortez employee already?
Yeah, he was our former engineer, Chad Hill.
Oh, okay.
So obviously I have no bad feelings towards the guy.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phil, you mentioned it was 2 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. And this is not the first time we've engaged. We've had a 2-year contract with Troutner Engineering for geotechnical services. So we've done multi-year contracts with Stripes a lot. So this is not new territory for us.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, because that way you get how to do your budget for the next couple of years on them. So with them, I guess I should say.
How many projects has SGM worked with Cortez in the past?
Well, we did the hydraulic model, the hydraulic recalibration. What else, Rich? They helped us with no, that was the other engineering firm. They also did the water line design in Paradise Village. When we did the streets, water, sewer, storm drain, they did the water design for us.
Thank you.
And, just to point out that, of these firms, the only one that I have no knowledge of whatsoever would be the PSI out of Colorado Springs. I know of and or have worked with all the other firms, and they're all very reputable and, could do the job. It's just that I just feel like SGM is very well-rounded, and I already stated the value of having Chad's mileage under his belt and keeping us moving forward in a timely fashion.
Sounds like a good plan. Do we any more public works updates?
I do have the one 7C, item 7C, the Dolores Water Conservancy M&I lease. So we started this process back in 2015, and we, being the city and DWCD, Dolores Water Conservancy District, discussed the potential for leasing out 1,000 acre feet of our 2,300 acre feet stored pay for annually. The council at the time had a really good discussion about it, and they determined that as long as we were not in any jeopardy of needing that in any way, shape, or form, and that water was kept local, i.e. ranchers in the area, not used downstream for any environmental or compact flow rate. demands. It was just to be reutilized within our area, region. And so we did it. And then first year we did it, we had a miracle May and we did not fulfill the lease. And then we did another lease in 2018. And then Ken Curtis, who's now the general manager for the DWCD, approached us to request another lease. So we pay $108 an acre foot for that water to sit in McPhee every year, whether we use it or not. And we have 2,300 acre feet in storage. So it costs us $108,000 for that 1,000 acre feet, whether we use it or not. And so for us to recoup, this year's rate is $33.17 per acre foot. For us to recoup that $33,000, I think is a win for us and a win for the locals. We get to, help a rancher or a farmer meet their irrigation needs, and we get to recoup, about 40% of our overall overhead just for that storage right. And I have provided in your packet a graph. I would like to show you that graph right now so I can talk to you about it in depth if you like, so you can have some questions right now if you want me to.
Yeah, could you explain that, Phil, the graph?
Sure, I could. I just wanted to, I was going to, let's see here.
Yeah, I have it on paper here.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Page 70, it looks like.
Oh, this one is black and white. That's too bad. Okay. Is yours black and white or color?
Color.
Color.
Okay, great. All right, just the two hashed lines that go straight across are, the top one is actually the 2,300 acre feet of water that we have stored. And the second one down, which is the same horizontal, is what 1,300 acre feet would look like. So we would sell that, or lease that middle block between the two horizontal lines that have the dots on them.
Okay.
The other there are two graphs or trends, I should say. The upper one is the non-project water, which is our river flow rights. The lower one is has the bigger undulations in the beginning, is our project water. And you can see down in 2000, we were using a lot of project water. And then we started to get our usage down heading into the early 2000s, 2004. You'll notice that there's a trend line behind both of those lines, both of those dotted lines above and below, that show a decrease in water usage over the course, even though we have a lot of undulations. So we are doing our job to reduce our water consumption in the city as a whole. Towards the right, you're going to see the graph just do a totally flip, where the lower one goes really high and the upper one goes low. And that's because they changed the way we used our water. It was about accounting, really. Our water use didn't change, just the accounting. And so our inflow stream right, which is 4.2 second feet, would only let us, hi, David, use that water during the irrigation season. And we had to use all project water during the non-irrigation season, which is November through April. And that's why the graph changed, but the usage didn't change, and both trend lines are still going down. Okay. And then the middle line that is trending up from left to right, that's just the population of Cortez. And then of course, I didn't have the actual demographics from 17 through 19. We just pulled those off of our conservation plan. Basically, what this graph demonstrates in a breath is that we have the ability and the capacity to lease out this 1,000 acre feet for this year without impacting our supply for the city.
So what does the drought look like forecast? Can you see if they're fire in the future?
Are you unmuting, Rich? Well, I think everybody's seeing the same thing we are, which is, a very warm and dry forecast. The drought monitor is gonna continue to creep in here for a very long time. Before when we had the really good winters in 19, we had a good one. We were the epicenter of the drought in the whole state. We were the deepest D5 and D4 for the longest in the whole state until the drought lifted. It lifted here last. And I just see it coming back. And Rich and I have been talking about this, and you know, we are really concerned that if we have a bad winter this year, next year could be very, very sketchy. But having said that, I want to let you know that 1,000 acre feet that we're going to lease out, there is no carryover. You know, we start January 1 with 2,300 acre feet stored, and at December 31, it all goes away. And then it starts, you know, then we start pulling on it again. No, is that water year, Rich? So confusing. Federal, fiscal, water.
However, water conservation project's been working, factoring into this.
Well, you know, I think, you know, we had a really good winter quarter. Rich and I have been looking at the data, and, you know, it really messes up our averages outdoor use. And if we have a really hot, dry May and we don't have the monsoons, our usage goes way up. And then if we have a dry fall, the same thing. And everyone can be using beautifully in the winter months, but it's all really seasonal, and the weather and the precipitation really drives our consumption.
So will that $33,170 go into the general fund, or how will that be allocated?
Well, my assumption would be the water fund, but the finance.
Water fund, yeah.
It sounds like a win-win situation here.
And it seems, so 2018 was a drought year, right? And we're still on that chart. It shows, you know, still 800 or so below that horizontal line of the bracket.
Right.
So,
Yeah, below the lower bracket at the least amount, yes.
yeah.
And I think, you know, we haven't really come up with a number where we're going to say, well, we don't feel comfortable leasing this. Like if we come up within, you know, 400 acre feet of that 1,300 limit, like if we're constantly drawing on that, we might not be in this position again. We don't know. But right now, I think Mayor Levy said it best. It's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, it seems great.
Thank you, Phil.
That's all I have.
Okay. Any more updates with Public Works or water treatment? Okay.
Nope.
We're still ahead of schedule here. Next item on the agenda is the update on the Recreation Center reopening. And speaking is the Director of Parks and Recreation, Dean Palmquist.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Levy and Council. Just to give a quick update, you know, again, we have the tier plan for the opening of the rec center, and that we had a walkthrough with the local health department, the county manager, the city manager, also our couple rec center employees. And so we walked through the facility just to kind of show the health department and the county manager what it would look like. And I think it was a very successful walkthrough with Melissa Matthews representing the local health department, and took some comments that she had regarding the walkthrough, and, you know, just moving forward with when we are allowed to open with safe practices in the recreation center. And also I included in the memo that when we are allowed to open, we would have new hours, 5:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. for the use of the fitness equipment, and 5:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lap swimming Monday through Friday, and then closed on the weekends. And that's what a lot of facilities are doing, is, you know, having more limited hours as they don't have as much available in the first tier of their openings. And with this also said, if you don't mind, Mayor Levy, bringing up that Mayor Levy, myself, and John Brooks did a little walkthrough this morning. We're planning on Thursday at 10 o'clock to do a virtual tour of the rec center, just to show the community what that experience would look like before they come in and use the facility. So we would hopefully see how safe the facility is in using, and that a lot of thought's been put into the reopening of the facility and just trying to, again, have safe practices in its use.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea, Dean. We've been, myself and several other the council members have gone through the walkthrough, and we have a pretty good idea what it looks like inside. It looks quite a bit different than it used to, but the general public are probably confused and concerned about what it's going to look like. Just before you even get in the facility, you have your temperature taken, and it has to be 101.4 or less in order to be admitted, I understand.
Or 100.4, I believe, is what we have as a target temperature, is 100.4.
That's right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that'll put a lot of people's minds at ease. They'll go through the check-in, and they have there's plexiglass shields up, keeping the staff and clients separate, and there's a lot of hand washing places, sanitation places in effect, and then the equipment has been moved from the second story to the rec center to the gymnasium and spread out in a safe manner. And so you're doing a great job in distancing and keeping safety and social distancing. And are you requesting face masks when you come in?
I think we're just recommending it. I don't, all the staff will have face masks, and we will have extra face masks available for community members that, would not have one, that they, at least giving them the opportunity to have one available for them to use. And also, too, I wanted to mention, Mike, that in each one of our areas of the facility, we will have a staff member to help clean each area. I mean, so after the cardio equipment gets used downstairs, there's an associate immediately to clean that piece of equipment, that cardio piece of equipment. Upstairs as well, too, having an associate to immediately clean anything, and there's processes they go through, like after they use a free weight, they would just leave them on the floor, and an associate would clean it before it goes back onto the rack. So we have I think have a pretty good process in place to make sure that the equipment will remain clean and disinfected and safe for the next person to use.
And will the elevator be in use for handicapped folk?
Oh, yes, definitely, Mayor Levy. The elevator will be in use, and we'll have somebody downstairs to, disinfect when it comes back downstairs, and then disinfect it when somebody will be upstairs as well, where they can disinfect that as well. And then we'll have a lot of signage too for directions, and what's expected at every different area. And, they'll be coming in the front door, and then they'll be leaving at the door next to the rock wall. So there'll be a different way to get out than typically you would use, but one that most facilities have done as well, where you're not leaving the same way you're coming in.
Right. I noticed that there's quite a difference from normal where you exit out by the community garden area.
Maybe we can encourage them to pick a healthy vegetable before they leave, huh?
Good idea.
Yeah.
What about the lap pool?
Yes, the lap pool, as long as the governor allows, we would have the lap pool available, one swimmer per lane. So we have 6 lanes at our lap pool, and so there would be only six swimmers allowed at one time, and we would have the family changing rooms available for people to change. We would encourage people, if they can, to come prepared to do their activity and, reduce as much, need for contact in the facility as possible. We also would have 2 restrooms available upstairs. We would not have the public restrooms available or the locker rooms available. So it would mainly be use of the family changing rooms in regard to the use of the lap pool.
What about, do people bring their own water bottles, or do you?
Yeah, we are recommending that people bring their own water bottles and, filled up, and that we do have 2 water fountain areas that do have water bottle fillers. So we would encourage that they could use those. We would, hopefully people are prepared when they come in with the water bottles, and that they would not use the water fountains. They would be available as well, but we would discourage that use and hope that everybody coming in has a water bottle that they have available to use. I think one of the big questions too, Mayor Levy, is I think people want to know when's the facility going to open, and we just had the new extension of the executive order by the governor right now, so I don't think there's been clear direction from the governor at this point of when gyms are allowed to open. I think we'll find out on June 1st what happens, because that's when the order now runs out, is on June 1st. And, I would hope then June 2nd, we would have some clear direction from the governor of when the rec facilities can open, and, then we can proceed from there.
Okay. This virtual walkthrough that we're planning on doing tomorrow, what is that going to look like?
Or actually it'll be Thursday at 10 o'clock. Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning. Yes.
And is that going to be a video that's going to be available on the city website?
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor Levy. We're going to have it available on the city website. We're going to have it on the city Facebook, so it should be very accessible by the public to see, just to get a idea of what they would anticipate when they come into the rec center for the first time when it is allowed to reopen. Okay. And we would kind of go step by step through the facility of what they would anticipate. So I would hope there would be very limited surprises when somebody comes into the facility, and like you've referenced, and seeing it a little differently now than what most people are accustomed to.
Dean, I have a question about the participants not being required to wear face masks. Our count is still going up, and I'm just wondering if that's the best approach.
Well, I think Council Member Rainey, it's the face mask is a very controversial issue. I think we all saw what happened down in Durango on the requirement for face masks, and there's a portion of the community that are for it and a portion that are against it, and you just kind of weigh it out. I'm hopeful that by not necessarily requiring it, that people just being responsible in doing what they think's best, and I would hope that would be public safety. And I guess from my perspective, I like that people can have more individual responsibility than us having to social engineer everything, and that they look out for the best interest of themselves and the people around them.
I wished I had as much confidence in that outcome as you do, but okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any more questions for Dean and the rec center reopening?
I did have one other thing, Mayor and Levy, if there's no further questions on the rec center, that in the state or the governor's new executive order, that he did proceed forward with summer camps. So we are moving forward with our Playground Days program, and I'm excited about that he gave pretty clear direction to say that you can have 10 or less in a group in indoor facilities and up to 25 or less in outdoor facilities, outside, in being outside. And I just want to say, from my perspective, that was a pretty big range of what was allowable with a group inside to outside, and that
Hello, Dean. I think we lost your audio, Dean. Okay, I guess we'll move on. We'll pick up where Dean left off. Okay, that's the next item on the agenda is the mayor's update on tree and signage. I got a email about a week ago from a homeowner in town, and he had some concerns about a tree in his front yard. It had been marked with white flags and had been spray painted with a white paint. And he felt like the tree was going to be removed, and he wanted to get some more information on it. So I thanked him for contacting us and told him we'd look into the matter. And I drove over there and inspected the tree. He gave his address, and it was on one of the main streets in town. A lot of trees on that street. And I noticed the flags and the sign and the spray paint. And I could see the problem. The sidewalk had been buckled, and then the street has been buckled, and the tree was huge. It was causing a lot of problems. So I contacted the Public Works Department head, and I also contacted Dean, Parks and Recreation, and they're both aware of the tree. It had been causing problems. The tree roots had damaged the ramp, sidewalk ramp going up to the main sidewalk, and had buckled the street, like I said. And there'd been several instances where a person with an electric scooter for handicap purposes had topped over on the scooter, tipped over, and happened twice. One time she had contacted the city, and the other time she just talked to one of the neighbors, and he helped her up. So evidently this is a problem. So we met with the Parks and Rec director and the Public Works director and myself and the homeowner one morning at 9 o'clock, and Public Works director gave him a map of the area, and we discovered that the tree is on the city right of way. It's not on the man's property, and it had been marked for removal because of safety reasons, mainly that sidewalk being buckled and safety issues. It was a problem in the neighborhood, and so we discussed the pros and cons of the tree, and Finally, he agreed, that it was a safety issue, and he agreed that the tree should be removed. So I thought this was a good way that the city responded to a concern from people in the city. They saw something that was going to be done, and they had concerns, and we discussed it with them. And I know tree removal is a very traumatic thing. I love trees. I planted 2,000 trees on my property when I lived outside of town, and we just hate to remove trees that have been there for a long time. But this particular tree had been placed in the wrong place at the wrong time, wrong type of tree, and unfortunately, his time had come, and so it had been scheduled for removal, and so it turned out, that the fellow was, understanding, and I thought this is a good approach that we should take, especially lately, when there's so many issues going on. If people have issues with the city, contact us. We listen to what's going on, and we'd like to hear your concerns, and if there's any way we can give you more information and assistance in putting your mind at ease, that's what we're here for. Another issue that in terms of signage was on the city Facebook page. The Pioneer Printing has made some signs for businesses. There's one that if people want, business owners want their clients to wear masks, they can purchase or get a free sign at Pioneer Printing to put in their businesses. And it's a voluntary thing. The business owners, if they want to encourage mask usage, they can post that at their business. And there's also another sign that asks for support for local businesses. So many times in the past, we've went to businesses and asked for donations for different causes. And like right now, it's the time for us to give back to our businesses. They're hurting. We're all hurting with this economic downturn. So anything we can do to help our businesses, we'd like to encourage it. The takeouts and patronizing the businesses. Like I say, we're all in this together, and we have to pull together and do our best. That's mainly what I wanted to speak to about in terms of the tree and the signage. Are there any other council concerns or discussion items? We have about 30 minutes.
That reminds me of a letter that was in our last workshop packet. The gentleman who is concerned about truck traffic on Chestnut. And Phil, are you still on the call?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to get like a road count there to see if if there is a significant amount of semi-trailers using Chestnut? He suggested not have like no left turn onto Empire from there, but I think that's gonna really affect the people who live around there. But could we designate that a non-truck route if there is a concern?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, ma'am. The previous council designated 7th Street as a no through truck avenue, but that's just the first step. The second step is identifying these and getting them out to the GPS software companies. I have a request into CDOT to see who they get their message pumped out to. So when people come into the state, they have these, areas of concern or rerouting. Well, why can't we include those? That's going to be the second thing, because the truck drivers that drive through here don't know us, don't know this place. It says, make a U-turn here and get back on route, because they miss 491 North.
Yeah, whatever Google Maps is telling them.
So if we can get that, if we can get the city, we can identify corridors, get them, demarked as no through trucks, and then get the word out to the software providers. Those are the first two steps. And then, of course, enforcement will come into play after that, because all the signs in the world aren't going to make a non-compliant driver compliant.
This is Green. We had some tickets written into Muni Court about this, and what we found was Siri Says is what's controlling the access. These guys are going down Main Street and they do a U-turn with a 45-footer. On Main Street, some of them barely speak English. I don't know what their reading skills are. So I live over in that neighborhood, and there's tractor trailers, maybe one or two a day. Sometimes they've been routed back down, and they're all just going to Empire to turn left. And I don't know what you do. It's an interesting phenomenon given how these guys are relying on GPS to get where they need to go.
And we have had this come up before, and we've worked with CDOT, and they did the diagrammatic sign down by where Lots of Pasta used to be, where the meeting started on North Broadway there, showing where the 491 160 split is. Then they have another set of signs on the 7th Street stoplight. Then they have those big 15-foot icons ground into the highway that says 160 here, 491 there, and they still miss it. And we put a sign in right there at the next stoplight, say, return to 491, and they missed that. So CDOT has really gone the extra leg with helping us trying to drive traffic in the right direction. But like Mike said, we need to get out to the GPS people, the companies, and I don't know how to do that yet. I'm still waiting.
Part of it too is that they're trying to avoid the scales.
Yeah.
I'd like to
Did
note,
you?
Sorry, go ahead, Sue.
I'm sorry. A lot of those semi drivers have to weigh in at the scales, and a lot of times to avoid the scales, they take these roads, the side streets and stuff, and that's what's happening there. And that's how come we're getting them in different places. They're trying to find ways out to where they can avoid going down to the scales.
I did notice that on, I think it was either Chestnut or Market, which both are noted in this guy's letter. One of those streets already did have a no through truck designation. So yeah, it's just a matter of people. It is a matter of people not noticing or not caring.
And some of those trucks might be going to the flour mill. We've got to remember, I forget which street that's on. So it's a mix of things. Yeah. But yeah, until the maps change, we're sort of kind of going to have it.
Okay. Any more council discussion items? Okay. One of the things on my agenda was the farewell thank you party for council members Karen Sheik, Ty Keel, Gary Noyes, and Jill Carlson has been postponed. The tentative date is the next council meeting on Tuesday, July 9th, 2020. If there's any, we'll give you an update on the particulars of that, depending on whether we can actually get together physically. So that'll be to be announced. But that's in the plans. We wanted to give those people recognition and thanks for serving on the council.
Mike, if I may jump in, I believe it's June 9th instead of July the 9th.
Yeah, that's what I meant. June 9th. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Also, Mike, I just wanted to add to that, if we are able to gather together physically on that night, we also want to get a council picture, if that's possible. So we'll talk about that as well as it gets closer. But we want to get that done so that we can get our directories completed. Not that we're holding them up for just the picture, but it is a part of that directory that goes out. So that's our goal as well, is to get a picture eventually within the next meeting or two.
Okay,
Yeah, but
thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, we finished up early tonight. I just want to remind everyone that's on the council and anyone that's listening to patronize your local businesses, your restaurants, get takeouts. A lot of great restaurants here. I've done my civic duty, enjoying a lot of restaurants, and the fact that we've been eating out a lot more lately than we have in the past. So keep up the good work, folks, and patronize your businesses and restaurants, and they're hurting. They're in a definite economic downfall, and they need everything we can do to support them. So if there's no other business in the council, I'm going to call this meeting to adjournment, and the regular council will begin at 7:30. Thank you for attending.
Thank you.